True love brought salvation back into me. With every tear came redemption, and my torturer became my remedy. So we're gonna heal. We're gonna start again. You've brought the orchestra, synchronized swimmers. You're the magician. Pull me back together again the way you cut me in half. Make the woman in doubt disappear. Pull the sorrow from between my legs like silk, knot after knot after knot. The audience applauds, but we can't hear them.
Innately within myself, kind of like a turtle. Once the turtle hatches on the beach, and let me sit down right here. Once the turtle hatches on the beach, it starts to know innately within itself where to go. And so the example is on the bottom of the belly of the turtle are these wrinkles. They're almost kind of like fingers. And so basically, in those fingers, or in the imprint of the stomach, the turtle has an innate understanding of where to go as soon as the egg hatches, from the egg to the beach, to the beach, to the ocean. And then in the ocean, turtles have like a long, what is it called? A long lifespan. And so, in and of me being here for Divas in Depression, I came here because, having come from both my dad, and I'll show that. And so that's my dad. And then about a year ago, my sister passed away. And so whoever did her flowers, actually, you know what? I'll rearrange it. So I'm going to rearrange it now. So these are her flowers. And then this is my sister. And so she died on the 13th. But since the arrangement of the flowers is so ugly, I'll do it myself while I'm talking to you guys. So basically, they got new flowers. Okay, let me fluff it up. So basically, I look at wanting to write a memoir, and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm going to talk about my family. But when I lost my dad when I was 15. And so I talk about like writing the book, and in the book I will go over the developmental stages and my work, or my practicum of work, having worked with 0 through 17, and then later on working with 18 and on up. And so that's called genealogies. And so doing that with the background of only having a 0 through 5 school age, and then intermediate understanding of my father, an intermediate understanding of my sister, who was about several years older than myself, it made it difficult for myself to attach not only just an emotion, but be able to express who they really were, and understand who they were and how they looked at their younger big brother or son. So when I look at them and I think about Divas in Depression, I'm like, oh, my dad, I love my dad. It's socially constructed that as children, we're supposed to respect and love our parents. And almost the same thing with sibling rivalry. If you've seen some of the blogs that I had written, I didn't write a blog, but I'll write a blog soon about my sister. But with the idea of innately inside ourselves is the answer to A, B, C, and D, or something logical. And then within the time span of, second, it's like these flowers are so tightly compacted that I can't hold on to it yet. So see within the time frame right there, and then with that time frame, it makes it difficult for me to be able to gauge what were the contributing factors in me wanting to leave something as like a legacy, or me dreaming bigger and wanting to pursue my goals and dreams. So I had to do like a lot of background research. So as of recently, if you've noticed that my second or the third level or stage of hierarchy plans is love and belonging. In and of that, it's kind of like the introduction to how I started 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, when I started working with IF, and then also when I started going back to school, and then I realized that my depression was more rooted not within just being LGBT or making mistakes as an adult. It really was something that genealogy and understanding of what was innate within our own family and in ourselves. But what I understand now, or what I understand today about divas and depression, I look at, oh, come on, divas, and I wouldn't say depression. I would say depression was something that plagued my dad's family prior to going to Guam. And so I've written about that before they went to Guam, where my grandmother remarried a real last name. That's just the American rules. And so looking back at that, I only ever really interviewed my dad's last sister, who passed away in February. And so I wrote all the stuff down in regards to how she came up with the name, and then I talked to my last living grandfather, who him and his sister, how the origins of Sualua, the name, came about. And so Sualua, the name came about in such a way, and then I'll go on further. But in Divas and Depression, I started to notice that when I first thought that on level 1, when I have to stand my ground, that it was that me being a diva, or me being gay, or me making a few mistakes in society, that's what I thought that was the issue of this whole, shenanigans or craziness that came from me struggling with depression and everything that comes underneath the authority or mental illness, or issues or situations that come with being depressed. So I had to I had to go back, and I had to go into all these spiritual and annals or books, and I studied. So when I was even at the Phoenix Rescue Mission, I kind of got an understanding more on the triangle aspect of depression. So, but learning how to measure myself in and of all that, I would think, oh, that's depression. That's depression. No lie, I really thought that was depression, but someone just opened the door. But what it is it's not a stem of fear. So in and of me saying, hey, I'm standing my ground, I'm going to start measuring my own crown and my own identity as a human being, I had to learn ways to measure if they're right, or if I'm right, or if I'm wrong, or if they're wrong. And so recently you notice that when some of my ethnographic research, I started challenging, not unknowingly, but just in research and trying to pursue my dreams and create a plan. And that plan was like Albert Einstein's. I noticed that I started to fulfill, I guess that sounds like a lot more magical, but it sounds like I fulfilled these measurements that came from the fathers of psychology. So you can go way back with psychology, spirituality, and then the physical component of health and stuff. But when I started, hi, how are you? Is it okay if I consult? Oh, it's stop me. Um, and so I noticed that like when with the Divas and Depression series, like of 11 stuff, there's a book. If you go on my LinkedIn or if you go on my Facebook, you'll see that I compare that 3 with convergent, divergent, and transvergent earthly movements and things that are just natural. And so when we attune ourselves and we start to ground ourselves or stand our own ground, it's a lot. It's a lot more different today and now when it comes to just saying, "Oh, I'm leaning on what I always knew, and now I'm leaning on all things that are new or what I know and stuff like that." And so once I started to measure the first level, I started to measure the second level because if and when the waves or the convergent or divergent waves of stress or life or emotions or depression start to come to you, it would only take a genius to realize that it's going to keep coming back and forth until you learn how to, ride the waves and how to be more. The word is, I think it's emotionally intelligent. And so a lot of the times, our depression is not based on just general intelligence, it's based on categories of intelligence. And so um, once we learn to categorize uh, Divas and Depression, um, Divas is helpful. And then once we learn how to categorize the depression is linked to the emotion, it comes from the thought and then catching it as soon as it happens before the emotion arises. And so once the emotion arises, you start to be able to become a lot more um, a better fighters with ways rather than just kind of laying down to the emotions. And so, and like, I don't personally know other than what was written in her eulogy about my sister. Um, it seemed like depression seemed to be a factor in there. I think with my dad, I can recall a health scare because I was so young, maybe even like a year before he died, and then like another health scare, like maybe a month or two, where he missed work or whatever. And then the day he died, we had a conversation. I was like kind of funny, and then he um, he just died. And so he had like a heart attack and stroke. And so a lot of those times when you do research on um, physiology and culture, it's not uncommon for Samoan men to pass at an early age because of their inability to not understand that in genealogy, your early stages of 0 through 18 affect your 20s and 30s, and your 20s and 30s affect your 40s and your 50s. And so when I look at my dad, who was my dad? I didn't know so much about him. I get to learn like he kind of was like a party animal. And so it's like, oh, great. Now I know where I get it from. And so it's something that's innately inside my DNA. But what my family doesn't know, or my relatives don't know, is that in the younger generation and in our Samoan culture with respect to elders, um, we don't teach the youth as much as we used to. We've gotten a lot better with education, like especially with, with discipline. In Divas and Depression, I don't guarantee anything that's totally for informational purposes. There's a book, and it's by Joyce Bismack, and it's called Why Don't I Feel Any Better? So she has 11 chapters that talk about her own recovery, kind of similar to myself, and her scientific research, which is geared towards adults in recovery, which is different towards my research that's geared towards the presupposition and um, proactiveness of helping a parent be more cognizant of these weeds in their own garden, in their own garden. But it's not easy because, like, if you notice, I posted about the Amish family. One of the Amish men who spoke at the Phoenix Rescue Mission was like, it's even difficult for Amish parents to um, raise their own teens. And in the Amish tradition, the Amish people are strictly separated from regular society. So there should not be any outside distractions. It really comes more from different theories or theologies and how we go about holding on to what we have here and here and then here and then seeing it manifest and go on and move forward. And so there's 11 chapters when, if you notice within the first stage, it's like, hold up, wait a minute. I'm going to stand my ground. I know that you don't have a problem with me being gay. I've been gay all crazy my whole life. And then the second level is now I got to start to measure the laws of attraction, because there's a reason why I'm going through this. There's a reason why this challenge, this water is going through in and through me. I need to not play the victim. I need to not just blame and point the finger at somebody else. I need to analyze myself and say, what is it about myself that's drawing myself to them or them to myself? And so when you start to measure your crown, a lot of times, they analyze crowns and, or wrestling belts or trophies, and it determines the value of that particular champion or that particular person. And so innately, I believe in all of a parent's job is to educate their children, and how they go about that is different for everybody. And no one's perfect, everybody goes their own way, but that's really been like a big part of my professional career, not my personal life. My personal life is really boring. um, and so, um, in and of the measure and stepping up, I think there's a scene where, if you ever watch the movie by Quentin Tarantino, the actress's name is Rose McGowan. So Rose McGowan, a quick story about her. I don't know her personally, but she was raised in a cult called the Children of God, or something like that. And then her and her mother broke out of that cult, and then she became an instant Hollywood star, where she played the kind of rebellious bad girl and purposely pushed buttons where she dated, like, Marilyn Manson and I think Robert Rodriguez and some other actresses. But she was also in Charm. And so she's in the movie Planet Terror. And so Planet Terror is a throwback to Grindhouse films. I wasn't born when they had like dual films, but I didn't get my dad's like psychology to be like, hey, it used to be like this in the old days. Why do we gotta pay so much and itemize, one movie when we could, in the old days, we could watch so many movies. But money talks and blah blah blah. So one day, the go-go dancer, his name is Cherry Darling, and she's dancing, and something happens where the zombies overtake the world, and one of the zombies attacks her, and she loses her leg, and so she goes to the hospital, and she can't stop crying, and she's like, oh, I can't dance, and it's that if a diva or a queen or a go-go dancer first level starts to recognize, hey, he or she doesn't feel good enough, or he or she starts to say, hey, am I depressed? What's going on? The second part is that the community or the providers or the system or books or thinkers and teachers or parents, what they're supposed to do is educate the child and how to rise above and bounce back. Talk about is because in and of my dad and his depression, not so much the depression that he had when he was dying. One of the issues with my dad was that I asked my mother what was my dad's last, things that he said to me, and she said he was worried about his kids. I did a great job with my sister, but she's kind of like a what's the word? She's always kind of difficult, and so I'll write about that more too, about how sometimes it really only takes the father and it really only takes the mother to really mend those childhood wounds, and because he was absent in our life, that grief becomes not a trophy child syndrome, but a cognitive dissonance. And so what happens is the child ends up having a learning disability, where even when they're faced with the same information, like a brother who says, "Hey, I'll buy you this or that," a little brother that says, "Okay, I'll do this for that," in lieu of their dad, even with that cognitive dissonance, the daughter slowly fails to recover.